you. We are going to start today with a story, how I think all things should start. This is a story of the shyest girl you will have ever met in your entire life who went through some trials and tribulations and somehow found herself here on the TED stage. So, when I was a kid, I, like I said, was the shyest kid you will have ever met. I have family members who can attest in the audience that when I went to family functions, I would hide behind my mom. I wouldn't hug my family members. Some of my aunts and uncles kind of understood, and they would go in for like a little high five, and I would gingerly reach my hand and be like, okay, I did it. And that was my human interaction. Little by little, I kind of got out of my shell a little bit. In, I think it was 5th grade, one of my teachers, Mrs. Smorelli, asked me if I could stay after school one day and talk to her. And now, I was pretty much a straight-A student, but I never raised my hand. I didn't participate in any sort of discussion, but I was a straight-A student. And so I'm thinking, why does she want to talk to me? I didn't do anything wrong. But as a kid who doesn't do anything wrong, I said, yeah, sounds good. And so after school one day, I talk to Mrs. S, and she says, listen, Lorna, I know that you know the answers to some of these questions, so we need to work on a way where you can get comfortable raising your hand and talking. And she suggests, why don't you put your hand on the corner of the desk when you don't want to answer a question? And so I say, okay, all right. And in my head, I'm thinking, that sounds reasonable. And then my hand was glued to the desk the rest of the year. I'm surprised I'm not still in that classroom with my hand on the desk right now. So little by little, got through high school. At the end of high school, beginning of college, I found myself working in the restaurant industry, which is a really good way to push yourself out of your shell a little bit more because you have to talk to people all the time. And then I found myself in Newhouse, like Sam said, in a journalism program, and I became a journalist where you have to talk to people for a living. Shocker. But I was telling other people's stories, and I got to tell their stories from behind the pen. And so while I was out of my shell, I wasn't out of my comfort zone. And so within my first year as editor of Syracuse Women magazine, I had a coworker who asked me, hey, Lorna, you like charity and you like the outdoors, right? And I say, yeah, what's up? And she said, do you want to do the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's extreme hike with me? And to my surprise, I say, yeah, sure, why not? Sounds great. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. So that was the beginning of the summer. So the summer, as it evolves, I learn a couple things. I learn what cystic fibrosis is. I learn what the foundation does. And it's a disease that affects the whole body. When the foundation was founded in the 1950s, it was founded by parents of kids with CF. And they were told, make your child comfortable, they probably won't outlive elementary school. And now, thanks to the fundraising done by the foundation, people with cystic fibrosis live into their 30s, 40s, and beyond, and we are inching closer to a cure every day. So I fundraised over the summer. Another thing, I learned that I was decent at asking people for money for a good cause. Never thought I could do that. But I did. I managed to raise a little over $2,000 that first summer. I also trained for the hike, which, let me tell you, running on a treadmill, if anybody wants to go climb a mountain this summer, go to a mountain to practice. Do not run on a treadmill. I don't care how many miles you run. It's still not going to do much. So eventually, the inevitable happened, and the night before the hike came, and I drove up to the high peaks. And I'll never forget some of the advice that was given to me that night. So Jack, who's in the audience right now actually, Jack tells us, among other useful tips, what to do if you come across a bear. Mind you, I was already terrified, and the thought of a bear had never crossed my mind. So Jack goes, if you come across a bear, what you do is you raise your hiking poles in the air, and you go, rawr! And here I am thinking, what? I do what? No, I'm bear food. That would be that. Luckily, spoiler, didn't have to take that piece of advice, thankfully. So the next morning comes, we get up bright and early, and we hit the trail. And I'm walking along, and I'm thinking, okay, 13 miles of walking, maybe on a tiny bit of an incline, I can do this. This isn't too extreme. And then we get to what was the first challenge for me. Now, it was a bridge. A bridge usually isn't a challenging thing for most people. But as soon as I saw this bridge, I thought of my recurring nightmares where I would go in a bridge, over water, and I would fall to my doom. So I see this bridge, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, I really hope this isn't my nightmare coming true. But I gingerly start to walk across, and somehow I get my foot stuck. And rather than ask my fellow hikers for help, like, oh, hey, can you help me pull my leg out of this really awkward position? I quietly let everybody pass, and I bend down and I untie my shoe, pull my disgusting sweaty foot out, pull the shoe out, and it's a whole ordeal. But I found a way to fix the situation, and I keep on moving. So then I get to these giant slabs of rock that seem to just keep going and going. This doesn't really do it justice. It was much more scary. So I'm looking at the rock ahead of me, and it's like at an incline like this. And my fellow hikers are just running. It seems to me like they're running up this hill. And I'm thinking, okay, they're not even using their hands. How? And so I sit and I assess the situation, and I keep thinking, I don't think I can do this. But I'm not about to be mountain woman and live there for the rest of my life. So I look and I see some trees, some happy little trees on the side. And I think, okay, well, if I go from tree to tree and I grasp onto each tree for dear life, I can get up there. And so that's what I proceed to do. Now, in retrospect, I'm thinking back, and I wasn't walking with everybody else, and I wasn't having those conversations, and I wasn't seeing the sights that they were seeing when they were just walking up and not staring at trees. So I digress. So I get to the top of it, and our hike guides say, Lorna, you did it. Congratulations, that was the hardest part. They lied. The people who volunteer for the extreme hike to guide our hikes, they are the nicest people you will ever meet in your life, but you have to learn right away. They don't always tell you the truth, usually for your own good, but they do tend to lie, little white lies. So 5 minutes later, we get up to this giant wall of rock. Now, the one that I had somehow gotten myself up already, that was like an incline like this. Now this one was like this. It looked like it was literally looming over me. So I look at it, take a couple deep breaths, and keep thinking, I don't think I can do this. But again, not gonna be mountain woman. And so I'm looking around, I'm looking for an alternative path, the Lorna version of doing it, where you can go to the edge of your comfort zone, but you don't necessarily have to step out of it. And so I see what appear to be some happy trees on the side, and I ask one of the people with me, hey, can I just go around that way? And they go, well, if you want to die, that might be a good option. And I think, well, that might be what I want to do right now. But I guess that probably is not the way I want to go. So everybody else continues to just climb up the rock. They're climbing up the rock. I wasn't trained to climb rocks. I didn't think I was going to have to go rock climbing. So eventually, everybody except for one other hiker and a couple of our guides have gone up. I'm thinking in my mind, well, they're probably at the very top of the mountain right now, wondering what is wrong with that girl. And one of the passersby notices a look on my face, probably of fear, that I was terrified, and goes, hey, do you want a boost? And I think, okay, all right, that sounds good, a boost, that works. And so I say, sure. And so she bends down and she puts her hands up, and I step 1 foot at a time onto her hands, and now I am clinging to the rock for dear life, looking at it from not exactly a safe distance anymore. And so I'm thinking, oh, I don't think I can do this. But take a couple deep breaths, try to relax a little bit, and all of a sudden in my mind that I don't think I can do this, changes to I can do this. And I had this moment of clarity that was like nothing I've ever experienced. There aren't even really words to describe it. And I look up to the very top of this awful, hellish scape, and I notice that one of the other hikers has his hiking pole extended for me to grab. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, like I said, I can do this, And so I reach up, and somehow, I still don't know how I did it, but somehow I managed to pull myself up. And I turn around, and in front of me is the high peaks, the most amazing view I've ever seen in my life. Now, since then, I've come across other mountains, both metaphorically and physically. And I think we all have mountains, we all have struggles, we all have things we need to somehow learn to figure out and move past. And I always think back to that hike. Now, one thing that I think about is some of the people that I hiked with. This is Mary Michaels. She was one of the people who went on a couple of the practice hikes and who's gone on a couple of the extreme hikes with me. Her daughter, Tess, has CF, cystic fibrosis. And this was taken a couple of years ago. And these are just some of the treatments and medicines that she has to do on a daily basis. And so every time that I think, oh my God, I don't think I can do this, I think, well, you can do it. And it's going to be over within, for the hike, a couple hours, for the TED Talk, 10 minutes. And but really, I think to myself, this is something that's going to pass. I'm going to find a way to get past it, and it's going to pass. It's not something that people have to live with, that people and whole families have to live with on a daily basis. And so it just helps me keep things in perspective. And then kind of on a grander thing that we can all relate to, I came up with a couple different steps, I guess, that I kind of bring myself back to when I'm in that I don't think I can do this position. The first of which is to be vulnerable. It's not something that I'm particularly good at. To be vulnerable, to admit to yourself that you're vulnerable means to admit that you can make mistakes. Now, I was the girl who had the hand on her desk. Even though I was pretty sure I had the right answers, I didn't want to make a mistake. So I didn't want to move it up. And so I have to remind myself over and over again, be vulnerable, because that's how you're going to eventually grow. And when you're vulnerable, brings you to step 2, which is to rely on and open yourself up to help from other people. Because most of these people, they don't want to judge you. They're looking to help you. They're looking to give you a boost up. Or they have their hand out to help you. And that kind of leads to the third step, which is push yourself out of your comfort zone. For some people, it's just get out of your comfort zone. For me, it's push yourself or have somebody shove you out of your comfort zone. Because it's the corny phrase is, you don't grow inside your comfort zone, you grow outside your comfort zone. And as corny as it is, it's true. I found that because of this hike and because of going back to these ideas every single time that I have a choice. Hey, Lorna, do you want to do a TED Talk? Hey, do you want to go first? And I have to push myself out of my comfort zone and say, yes, I do. Because once you get there, the view is amazing. Thank you.